The mechanical whir of servo motors filled the gymnasium as 13-year-old Sierra Washington adjusted the solar panel alignment on her prototype wheelchair. Her fingers, steady, despite the spinal brace wrapped around her torso, made precise calibrations to the photovoltaic array. The device responded beautifully, its electric motor humming to life as artificial sunlight from the overhead display lamps powered the lithium battery pack. "Impressive work, young lady!" The judge's voice carried genuine admiration as she examined Sierra's project display. "How long did this take you to build?" 6 months. Ma'am, I started right after my surgery last fall." Sierra's voice carried quiet pride, her dark eyes bright with enthusiasm. The blue ribbon for first place in the engineering category already hung from her display board, catching the fluorescent lights overhead. Across the crowded gymnasium floor, her uncle Elias Grant held up his phone, recording every moment. At 52, he cut an unassuming figure in his simple gray suit and wire-rimmed glasses, more observer than participant in the celebration surrounding them. Parents clustered around winning projects. Teachers guided local news crews toward photogenic displays, and students demonstrated their innovations with animated explanations. Sierra had spent countless evenings in Elias's garage workshop, her crutches leaning against his workbench as they soldered circuits and programmed microcontrollers together. The prototype represented more than just a science fair project. It was proof that her condition wouldn't define her limitations. The scoliosis had progressed rapidly during her growth spurt, requiring emergency spinal fusion surgery that left her dependent on mobility aids for several months. During her recovery, she'd watched her grandmother struggle with an aging manual wheelchair, fighting against curbs and inclines that seemed insurmountable. The solar-powered prototype could navigate outdoor terrain with ease, its GPS navigation system plotting optimal routes while regenerative braking extended battery life on long journeys. "Uncle Elias, look at this," Sierra called out as she demonstrated the obstacle avoidance sensors. The wheelchair navigated around a table leg with smooth precision, its ultrasonic sensors detecting the impediment and plotting an alternate path. The artificial intelligence learns from each route and gets better at predicting problems. Elias smiled, continuing to record. "Your grandmother would be amazed. This could help thousands of people. Sierra." The gymnasium buzzed with activity as the Riverside Community Science Fair reached its peak attendance. Local officials mingled with proud families, while a discreet live-stream camera in the corner broadcast the event to the State Education Department's STEM Initiative webpage. Governor Patricia Hernandez had personally endorsed the program, viewing it as a cornerstone of her technology education reform package. Sierra barely noticed the two uniformed officers enter through the main doors. Homeowners Association security had become commonplace at community events since the Riverside HOA had contracted with MetroGuard Security Services 18 months earlier. The guards typically focused on parking enforcement and noise complaints, rarely venturing into educational gatherings. Officer Derek Mathens scanned the gymnasium with predatory intensity, his partner Jake Morrison following close behind. Both men wore tactical gear more suited to riot control than community policing ballistic vests, pepper spray canisters, and extendable batons creating an intimidating silhouette against the festive backdrop. "There." Mathens pointed toward Sierra's display. "That contraption's got to be a fire hazard. Look at all those batteries and wires." Morrison nodded grimly. "Mechanical equipment like that needs permits. HOA regulations are clear about unauthorized devices on community property." They approached Sierra's booth with deliberate authority, their heavy boots echoing against the polished gymnasium floor. Conversations quieted as they passed, parents pulling children slightly closer, teachers exchanging concerned glances. "Excuse me, young lady." Mathens' voice carried the flat authority of someone accustomed to immediate compliance. This mechanical contraption of yours violates multiple fire safety codes. We need you to shut it down immediately." Sierra looked up from her demonstration, confusion clouding her features. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is just a science project. It's been approved by the Fair Committee and inspected by the fire marshal." "Don't talk back to me." Morrison stepped closer, his hand resting casually on his baton. "We're HOA contracted security, and we have authority over all community events. This equipment is hazardous and needs to be removed from the premises." The judges who had been examining nearby projects began to notice the commotion. Dr. Patricia Wong, the fair coordinator, hurried over with clipboard in hand. "Officers, is there some problem? All our projects have been safety inspected, according to district guidelines." Mathens barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, this is an HOA matter. The girls got unlicensed mechanical equipment with exposed electrical components. It's a clear violation of community safety standards." "This is ridiculous." Sierra's voice carried a tremor of frustration. "It's a prototype wheelchair with standard automotive batteries. Everything's been properly insulated and tested." "I said don't talk back." Morrison's voice rose sharply, drawing stares from across the gymnasium. "You're going to power down this device and remove it from the building, or we'll cite you for hazardous equipment violations." Elias stepped forward, his phone still recording. "Gentlemen, perhaps we can discuss this reasonably. My niece has won first place in the engineering category. Her project poses no safety risk whatsoever." "Sir, step back and keep your hands visible." Mathens' training kicked in, his posture shifting to a defensive stance. "We don't need civilian interference in a security matter." The confrontation was escalating beyond reason. Sierra's prototype represented months of careful work, her hopes for the regional competition, and, potentially, a pathway to college scholarships. She couldn't simply watch them dismantle everything she'd built. "I won't shut it down." Her voice carried quiet determination despite the fear in her eyes. "This project could help people. You have no right to stop me from demonstrating it." Morrison's patience evaporated. "That's it. You're in violation of a direct order from authorized security personnel." He reached for Sierra's arm, but she instinctively pulled away, her spinal brace limiting her mobility. The sudden movement caused her to stumble slightly, and Morrison interpreted it as resistance. "She's resisting. Help me get her outside." Mathens grabbed Sierra's other arm, and together they began forcing her away from her display. The prototype wheelchair, still powered and responding to its programming, attempted to follow its designated operator. Its sensors detected the sudden movement and activated emergency protocols, causing servo motors to whir loudly as it tried to navigate toward Sierra. "The thing's going haywire," Morrison shouted, kicking at the wheelchair's frame. His boot connected with the battery housing, sending sparks flying as delicate circuits shorted out. Sierra cried out as they dragged her across the gymnasium floor, her spinal brace pressing painfully against her ribs. Parents gasped and pulled their children back, creating a wide circle around the unfolding scene. The festive atmosphere had transformed into something approaching panic. "Stop, you're hurting her, Doctor," Wong shouted. But neither officer responded to her protests. Elias followed closely, his phone capturing every moment of the brutal treatment. His legal training screamed warnings about excessive force and civil rights violations, but years of experience had taught him when to document rather than intervene physically. They dragged Sierra through the gymnasium doors and into the parking lot, where Morrison shoved her roughly against a concrete retaining wall. Her head struck the surface with a sickening thud, leaving her dazed and fighting back tears. "You stay right there, girl, while we deal with that hazardous equipment of yours." Mathens returned to the gymnasium and began dismantling Sierra's display with deliberate brutality. He ripped the solar panels from their mounting brackets, sending photovoltaic cells scattering across the floor. The battery pack, already damaged from Morrison's kick, sparked and smoked as exposed wires shorted against the metal frame. The prototype wheelchair, Sierra's months of careful engineering and programming, was systematically destroyed in front of dozens of witnesses. Its aluminum frame twisted under Mathens's boots, its circuit boards cracked and scattered, its dreams of helping disabled individuals crushed along with its delicate components. Outside, Morrison produced a citation book and began writing furiously. Sierra Washington, age 13, residence unknown. Citation for operation of hazardous mechanical equipment on community property. Fine, $250. Sierra stared at the yellow paper thrust into her hands, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't legal. You can't fine me for a science project." "I can, and I did." Morrison's satisfaction was evident. "And if you keep running your mouth, I'll add disorderly conduct and recommend juvenile court proceedings. Trust me, girl, you don't want that kind of trouble following you around." Elias helped Sierra to her feet, noting the abrasions on her arms and the way she favored her right side where the spinal brace had been pressed against the wall. His phone had captured everything, from the initial confrontation to the destruction of her project to the illegal citation. "Officers," his voice carried careful control, "I believe you should know something important before this goes any further." Mathens looked up from his radio report with irritation. "Sir, we've told you to stay back. This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it concerns me quite deeply." Elias removed his wallet and extracted a business card, handing it to Mathens with steady fingers. "My name is Elias Grant. Tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I'll be sworn in as Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court." The parking lot fell silent, except for the distant hum of traffic. Morrison's pen stopped moving across his citation book, and Mathens stared at the embossed card as if it might spontaneously combust. Furthermore, Elias continued with measured calm, "This entire science fair is being live-streamed to the governor's STEM initiative website. Your destruction of my niece's award-winning project has been broadcast to every state education official in real time. Governor Hernandez is scheduled to review today's programming during tonight's education gala." The color drained from both officers' faces as the implications sank in. Mathens fumbled for his radio, but Elias raised a gentle hand. "I wouldn't recommend making this worse with false reports. Everything has been recorded from multiple angles, and I suspect the livestream viewers have already alerted their supervisors." Inside the gymnasium, Dr. Wong was indeed fielding urgent calls from district administrators who had watched the confrontation unfold in real time. The state education department's livestream had captured every moment in high definition, and social media was already exploding with outrage as viewers shared clips of the incident. Morrison tried to salvage the situation with desperate authority. "Sir, regardless of your position, the girl was operating hazardous equipment in violation of community standards. We responded appropriately to a legitimate safety concern." A solar-powered wheelchair prototype built by a 13-year-old with scoliosis constitutes hazardous equipment. Elias's legal mind was already cataloging the civil rights violations, the excessive force, the destruction of property, and the fraudulent citation. "Gentlemen, I suggest you contact your supervisors immediately and inform them that this incident will be reviewed at the highest levels of state government." Sierra leaned against her uncle, exhaustion and shock overwhelming her. 6 months of work destroyed in minutes, her dreams of helping disabled individuals crushed under the boots of ignorant authority. The citation crumpled in her trembling hands as she struggled to comprehend how quickly celebration had transformed into persecution. Uncle Elias, they broke everything. My project, my prototype, everything's ruined. No, sweetheart. They destroyed some equipment, but they can't destroy your mind or your determination. What you built can be rebuilt, better and stronger than before. His phone buzzed with incoming calls as news of the incident spread through legal and political circles. The livestream had been recorded by dozens of viewers, ensuring that no amount of official denial could erase the evidence of what had occurred. Mathens finally managed to reach his supervisor on the radio, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Control, this is Unit 72. We have a situation at the community center that requires immediate supervisory response." The radio crackled with static before a familiar voice responded, "Unit 72, we're already aware of your situation. Return to base immediately for debriefing, and Mathens, bring Morrison with you." As the officers retreated to their patrol car, Sierra surveyed the wreckage of her science fair booth through the gymnasium windows. Broken solar panels glittered like dark crystals across the polished floor, while twisted metal and scorched electronics marked the grave of her prototype wheelchair. But the destruction had awakened something deeper than anger or despair. The injustice of their actions, the casual cruelty with which they had dismissed her work and dreams, crystallized into a determination that no amount of intimidation could crush. "They think they can silence me," she whispered, her voice gaining strength with each word. "They think because I'm young and black and disabled. I don't matter. They're wrong." Elias smiled despite the circumstances, recognizing the steel that had always run through his family's bloodline. Tomorrow evening, Governor Hernandez is hosting her annual education gala. Every state legislator, every department head, every education advocate in the state will be there to celebrate STEM achievements. He held up his phone, its memory filled with incriminating footage. And they're all going to see exactly what happened here today. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of media attention and political maneuvering. The livestream footage had gone viral, generating millions of views and thousands of outraged comments. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as everything from racial profiling to disability discrimination to the militarization of community policing. MetroGuard security services found themselves in the impossible position of defending the indefensible. Their contract with the Riverside HOA came under intense scrutiny as legal experts questioned the authority of private security to cite citizens for imaginary violations. Sierra spent the day rebuilding what could be salvaged from her prototype, working with fierce determination in Elias's garage. Local engineers and technicians, inspired by news coverage of her treatment, volunteered their time and expertise. The new wheelchair took shape quickly, incorporating improvements suggested by professionals who recognized her innovative approach. Meanwhile, Elias prepared for the most important speech of his career. The governor's education gala would provide a platform not just for justice, but for transformative change in how the state approached STEM education and community policing. The grand ballroom of the state capitol building glittered with formal attire and political ambition. Governor Hernandez moved through the crowd with practiced grace, discussing education funding and innovation initiatives with legislators and bureaucrats who controlled millions in state resources. Elias entered quietly, his judicial robes replaced with formal evening wear. Few of the assembled dignitaries recognized the mild-mannered attorney who had just been elevated to the state's highest court, and he preferred it that way. His phone contained footage that would dominate tomorrow's headlines, but tonight belonged to Sierra. "Ladies and gentlemen," Governor Hernandez's voice carried across the ballroom as she approached the podium. "Tonight, we celebrate the young innovators who represent our state's technological future. Their achievements in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics demonstrate the power of education to transform lives and communities. The audience applauded politely, wine glasses chiming as they were set down on cocktail tables. Behind the governor, a massive screen displayed highlights from various STEM competitions and science fairs throughout the state. However, her expression grew serious. Yesterday's events at the Riverside Community Science Fair remind us that innovation means nothing without justice, and education fails when it's not accessible to all our children. Elias stepped forward, his presence commanding attention without theatrics. Governor Hernandez, with your permission, I'd like to share some footage that illustrates exactly why justice and education must go hand in hand. The ballroom fell silent as the massive screen flickered to life. High-definition footage from multiple angles showed Sierra's prototype wheelchair in operation, its elegant engineering clearly visible to the assembled crowd. Then came the confrontation, the dragging, the destruction, and the illegal citation. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience as they watched 13-year-old Sierra being brutalized for the crime of building something beautiful. The footage was devastating in its clarity, showing every moment of excessive force and wanton destruction. The young woman you just watched being assaulted is my niece, Sierra Washington, Elias announced, his voice carrying judicial authority. Her prototype wheelchair represents 6 months of innovative engineering that could revolutionize mobility assistance for disabled individuals. It was destroyed by private security officers who claimed authority they didn't possess to enforce regulations that didn't exist. Governor Hernandez stared at the screen in horror, her political instincts immediately recognizing the magnitude of the crisis. The footage was damning, not just for the officers involved, but for the entire system that had allowed such abuse to occur. Chief Justice Grant. Her voice carried formal weight. What actions are you recommending? First, the immediate revocation of MetroGuard Security's contracts with all HOA organizations in the state. Private security companies should not possess citation authority over citizens, especially when they lack proper training or oversight. The audience murmured agreement, recognizing the dangerous precedent that had been allowed to develop. Second, the establishment of a state-funded STEM innovation lab to be named in Sierra's honor, with a $1 million annual budget to support young inventors from underserved communities. This drew enthusiastic applause from the education advocates in attendance, who had long argued for increased support for minority students in technical fields. And third, the immediate arrest of Officers Mathens and Morrison on charges of assault, destruction of property, and civil rights violations. Their actions were not just unprofessional, they were criminal. Governor Hernandez nodded grimly, her phone already buzzing with calls from her legal staff. Chief Justice Grant, consider your recommendations implemented immediately, and I want Sierra Washington here next week to personally demonstrate her rebuilt prototype for the state legislature. As if summoned by their conversation, Sierra appeared at the ballroom entrance, wheeling her reconstructed prototype with quiet dignity. The new design incorporated suggestions from professional engineers while maintaining her original innovations, creating something even more impressive than her original creation. The assembled dignitaries rose to their feet in spontaneous applause as she navigated across the polished marble floor. Her solar panels caught the ballroom's crystal chandelier light, while her obstacle avoidance sensors smoothly guided the wheelchair between cocktail tables and formal gowns. Ladies and gentlemen, Sierra's voice carried across the silent ballroom with growing confidence. This prototype can travel 50 miles on a single solar charge, climb 15-degree inclines, and navigate complex terrain using artificial intelligence that learns from every journey. But more importantly, it represents hope for millions of disabled individuals who deserve independence and dignity. She paused, her dark eyes finding Elias in the crowd. Yesterday, two men tried to destroy my dreams because they thought I didn't matter. They were wrong. We all matter. And our innovations can change the world if we're given the chance to succeed. The applause that followed was thunderous, shaking the ballroom's historic windows as politicians, educators, and advocates showed their support for the young woman who had refused to be silenced. 3 hours later, state troopers arrested Officers Mathens and Morrison at their respective homes, executing warrants signed by Chief Justice Grant himself. The charges were extensive assault on a minor, destruction of property, filing false reports, and violation of civil rights under color of authority. Metro Guard Security Services lost their contracts with 47 HOA organizations before sunrise, their corporate reputation destroyed by association with the brutal footage that continued spreading across social media platforms. The Riverside HOA faced federal investigation for their role in enabling the assault on Sierra, with residents organizing to remove the board members who had approved the security contract without proper oversight. But the real victory came 6 months later, when Sierra's rebuilt prototype won first place at the National Science Fair, earning her a full scholarship to MIT and a provisional patent for her solar wheelchair design. The recognition represented vindication, not just for her individual efforts, but for every young person whose innovations had been dismissed or destroyed by ignorant authority. The Sierra Washington STEM Innovation Lab opened its doors the following fall, equipped with state-of-the-art facilities and staffed by volunteer engineers who donated their time to nurture the next generation of innovators. Located in the same community center where Sierra's original prototype had been destroyed, it served as a permanent reminder that justice delayed is not justice denied when people refuse to accept oppression. Chief Justice Grant presided over the lab's dedication ceremony with quiet satisfaction, watching as dozens of young inventors demonstrated their own prototypes and innovations. Sierra, now 16 and preparing for her freshman year at MIT, served as the lab's first student director, mentoring younger students with the same patience her uncle had shown her. "You know what I learned that day," she told a reporter during the dedication ceremony, her solar wheelchair gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. "I learned that they can destroy your work, but they can't destroy your mind. They can silence your voice, but they can't silence your determination. And when you have family who believes in you and a community that supports you, there's no limit to what you can achieve." The prototype wheelchair that had started as a science fair project became the foundation for a company that revolutionized mobility assistance worldwide. Sierra's innovations helped millions of disabled individuals achieve independence they had never thought possible, while her story inspired countless young people to pursue STEM careers despite facing discrimination and obstacles. Officer Derek Mathens served 18 months in state prison for assault and civil rights violations, while Officer Jake Morrison received 2 years for the same charges plus destruction of property. Their cases became textbook examples in police training programs, illustrating the legal and professional consequences of excessive force and civil rights abuse. Metro Guard Security Services declared bankruptcy within a year, their reputation so damaged that no community organization would risk association with their brand. The company's collapse sent shockwaves through the private security industry, leading to increased regulation and oversight of contractors serving residential communities. The Riverside HOA underwent complete reorganization, with new leadership implementing transparency policies and community oversight mechanisms designed to prevent future abuses of authority. They established an annual scholarship fund in Sierra's name, supporting local students pursuing STEM education. But perhaps the most important change was cultural. Sierra's story became a catalyst for broader discussions about racial bias in policing, disability rights in education, and the importance of protecting young innovators from systemic discrimination. Her courage in standing up to unjust authority inspired policy changes at state and federal levels, ensuring that other young people would have better protection when pursuing their dreams. Years later, as Dr. Sierra Washington accepted her Nobel Prize in Engineering for revolutionary advances in assistive technology, she credited that traumatic day at the science fair with teaching her the most important lesson of her career, that innovation without justice is meaningless, but justice with innovation can transform the world. Standing at the podium in Stockholm, her voice carried the same quiet determination that had refused to be silenced in a community center parking lot. To every young person who has had their dreams dismissed or destroyed by those who think you don't matter, you do matter. Your ideas matter. Your innovations can change the world, and no one has the right to take that away from you. In the audience, Chief Justice Elias Grant wiped away tears of pride as his niece concluded her acceptance speech. The scared 13-year-old with a destroyed science project had become a global leader in assistive technology, her solar wheelchair innovations improving millions of lives worldwide. The prototype that had been crushed under ignorant boots in a school gymnasium had evolved into a symbol of resilience, justice, and the power of family support to overcome even the most brutal oppression. Sierra's story proved that individual courage, combined with systemic change, could transform tragedy into triumph and create a better world for future generations. As the Nobel ceremony concluded, Sierra wheeled herself off the stage in her latest prototype, its advanced AI systems navigating the crowds with elegant precision. The solar panels gleamed in the Swedish sunlight, powering not just a mobility device, but a symbol of hope that continues inspiring young inventors around the world. The science fair incident that had begun with such brutal injustice had ultimately generated transformative change, proving that sometimes the most powerful innovations emerge from the darkest moments when courage refuses to surrender to oppression.